Hey everybody, it's Valerie here, bringing you yet another segment of the burnout piece. It's a pretty big issue and a bit simplistic to only have it covered in one segment. So far, if you've been following me, I've been just breaking it down into its component parts. I've talked about part of the issue is we have a disconnect to our why we do things. And interestingly, I've been reading a book, Simon Sinek, and I love how he put it. Purpose is not about looking forward. Purpose is actually about looking backwards and gaining insight, connections, and meanings from the things that have happened to us and really distilling down the reason for why we do things. In another segment, I then talked about our sense of self and the various facets of how we see ourselves when we actually walk away from the mirror. What is the essence? Things like our values, what we believe in, a sense of our positive attributes, a sense of control and things like that. So our purpose is being expressed through the, as an expression of ourselves. And then the three things, and I'm going to talk about one of them now, so I'll make them smaller because these are the things that I don't want to talk about in this segment. You get another couple of videos. This being the hygiene factors, things like what we do for ourselves. That's where the whole self-care idea comes in. I've just drawn a blank what the other one is. But anyway, today, I'm really wanting to talk to you then about the relationship with ourselves and work, which is part of the burnout equation that doesn't get talked about quite as much. I think we have kind of an all or nothing thinking when we come to burnout, and we think that because we're tired, we must actually be overworked, and therefore the solution is actually to decrease what we do. However, what can happen is when we do that drastically, that also reduces our sense of purpose, because if we don't keep at what we're doing that's important to us and that brings us a sense of purpose, then it actually reinforces the message of failure. So yes, rest is important. So that's one of the hygiene factors. Rest is important, but knowing how to rest and knowing when to rest is a different question. So looking at work, basically Maslow's model of burnout has got 6 areas that we need to look at when we're looking at our relationship with work and how burnout is coming from there. First of all, there's the load. And actually, I like to say it's not just about load, it's also about the type of work we're doing. There's the degree to which there's reward, there's fairness, there's community, there's values. I always forget the 6th one, so I wrote it down for myself. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, control. Hopefully that's all being seen. Let me just make sure. Yes, excellent. You can just see. So you can actually take an audit in these 6 areas for yourself and do, a checklist to see where some of those areas may be depleted in your relationship with work. So workload and work type. Don't have my rough. I just need more space. Sorry, last 2 boxes. You need to go away. There's a few models that we can look at the way to make sense of that. The one that I guess tends to get a little bit more airtime is the jobs, demands, resources model. So the idea is that when you've got a clear sense of your why and who you are, you're actually then able to input and figure out what are the job demands that are overwhelming, what are the job demands that really don't fit into your center of meaning or why you're there, and even really sit outside your scope, your role. So you might be in a situation where your role has become a dumping ground. You basically just absorbed everything else because maybe there was some departmental restructuring, maybe there was some human resources issues, people left or people have gone on leave, and your job role just became this conglomerate of stuff, right? It really doesn't link anymore, give you a consistent sense of why you're doing the things that you're doing. There may be a resourcing issue. There could be that there hasn't been a clear looking at the workflow, the types of demands on you, the resourcing, whether you've got training, whether you've got the finances to do it, whether you've got the pathways of communication, whether you have the power to actually do your job. So the job's demands resources basically looks at not taking away necessarily demands, also looking how you can resource yourself in the work role. And in times of burnout, I often say that two things probably need to happen here. Making sure that you're actually sure what your role is, and that the majority of your role still very much ticks these boxes. And then comes obviously the resourcing issue. What do you actually need to actually get your job done so you have a sense of achievement, right? So that's the workload, work type conversation. It's not really just about decreasing your workload. It's actually about increasing capacity and increasing the degree to which you have a sense of motivation, achievement, contentment, and feeling like you can do what you need to do. And then come these other areas, which I'll just talk briefly about, but I'm not going to delve into. So a sense of reward, whether what you're doing is intrinsically rewarding, not just in terms of finances, but whether you're feeling like it contributes, whether it's gaining momentum, whether there's some, whatever other rewards might come with working, synergy, teamwork, making a difference, that sort of thing. Fairness, whether you're actually thinking that your role and your job in relation to what other people are doing is fair, whether the load on you is fair, etc. Community, the degree to which you have connectivity within your workplace, your department, whether you're getting clear feedback, whether you're actually having a chance to participate in culture, those sorts of things. The values, whether or not what you're doing and the company that you belong to, your values are aligned. If there's a great incongruence of values, then you're going to feel more stressed. If you're not aligned to the organizational ethos, if the vision and mission truly of the organization just irks you, and finally the degree to which you feel you have control and autonomy over what you do. Some of us need more, some of us need less. Some of us, because of the requirements or the outcomes that are expected of us, need more autonomy. So it's about actually feeling like you've got what you need to do what you do. Now, in all of these things, and you can dig into them individually and make a map for yourself or modify your work, but the bottom line is, if you don't have a clear sense of purpose and you then don't have a clear sense of who you are in the work that you do, there's a bunch of eights that will become very difficult. So here are the eights. When it comes to negotiating the work relationship, sometimes you may need to advocate. Sometimes you may need to activate, meaning maybe the job is really boring. So here's another concept. Let's see if I can very quickly do this. I'm not very good with these sorts of matrix, but demanding, no demand, high resource. So, if I'm very good at explaining these quadrants, but if you've got a job where you have high resourcing as well as a high demand, in other words, it's quite challenging and engaging, then you might sit in quite an activated space here. Versus you've got a job where you have low demand as well as low resources, you're actually going to be bored, right? So that's the other eight. Activate, whether you need to figure out where you fit in these quadrants. Maybe you're here and you've got to get back up here. The other eight that I've got is sometimes you've got to negotiate your role. Sometimes you've got to resuscitate your role as well. Like maybe it's completely dead in the water. And sometimes you've got to deviate, meaning that you might actually need to change jobs. However, it's really not a great idea to do any of this when you're in a reactive space and possibly when you're very, very burnt out, right? We usually say don't make major decisions when you're not in a good frame of mind. The other thing is it takes confidence. So if we look at the 3 clusters of burnout, exhaustion, a sense of impacted confidence and achievement, and alienation and withdrawal. So if you don't have, if you're burnt out and you're actually not feeling confident and like you're achieving, you're also not going to have the confidence to walk into a workspace and negotiate or do any of the 8s. You'll find it difficult, right? So therefore, actually, burnout prevention hence is really vital, because if we can figure out some of this stuff and then work actively to clarify this stuff within a seat of feeling confident, feeling resourced, feeling really clear within ourselves, to be able to then evaluate, audit those 6 areas and negotiate, or my different 8s, whether it's activate, advocate, negotiate, resuscitate, or even deviate, which is to leave the job. So that's the work component in a nutshell. Okay, take care.